Oh God, not again.
Are we quorum, Martin?
We are. Would it be helpful, Chairman, if I just very quickly ran through the names of the people I think are in the meeting, and if I miss anyone's name, perhaps they could just indicate. We've got the chairman in. We've got Councillor Delaney, Councillor Bissett. We've got Councillor Judah, Councillor Davison, Councillor Norman Plumpton Walsh, Councillor Thompson, Mr. Sally Hardwick, Councillor Riley, and Councillor Finlow.
Okay.
Martin, Councillor Warren here. Can you not see me?
I can hear you now, Mick. Thank you.
We've got Councillor Walker with us, or not? No.
I can't see him and I can't hear him.
So a quick quorum, you happy to kick off?
We are quorum, Chair.
So first of all, could I just welcome everyone? You'll all be aware we've been using various devices. Thank goodness today we're not on Skype. We're on Microsoft Teams. If you wish to speak at any time, either wave your hand in the air, or if you click the hand, I'll pick up on that and I'll take you in order as you appear. You might just want to consider turning off any mobile devices, your mobile phone, if you haven't thought of that already. Take a moment to thank, because I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. I'm glad to be back. To welcome Councillor Lynn Riley. So I know he's got a lot of experience in the past through the police authority. Most challenging on the police and crime panel, which is exactly what we like and need. And Peter Walker's not here either. I know Peter from old, he sat on the fire authority, and he was a great supporter of the fire and rescue service. So we have added to what is already a good team. Could I just, following on that, ask Martin, have we got any apologies, Martin?
Chairman, no, we have no apologies for the meeting.
Could I just ask members if there is any declaration of interest at all? I'm not seeing any hands, anything, so I'll take that as a no. Martin, Roger, are there any public speakers today?
Chairman, we have no public speakers today.
If I could go to the minutes of the last meeting, I won't go through them page by page. If you've all read them, is there anything anyone would wish to raise with the contents of the meeting, last meeting? I've taken that as a no.
Are we having matters arising?
Matters arising from the minute, I can take those.
Chairman, could I just, sorry, before you move on to that, could I just mention the communication we've had from the Commissioner, which I think you were just going to mention?
I was just going to do that prior to Paul. I'll come to you in a minute, Paul, on that. Just to add, we were contacted by the Commissioner's office yesterday, and they obviously taken interest in our excellent minute, and I've made a comment to make an amendment, which I'll just read to you. It is quite lengthy, so if you'll bear with me. We've had helpful communication from the Commissioner's office. This was of yesterday, which is usually fed into the panel's minutes, providing helpful clarification on a couple of points, both on page 9 of your papers. First point relates to the Commissioner's response to Councillor Findlow's question on data. Final sentence of the bullet point should now read, and this is the amendment, the Commissioner advised that through scrutiny has sought assurances that the Chief Constable has the correct resources in the right place to ensure that the integrity of crime data. Second point relates to the bullet point immediately below, where the final sentence could read, he could have private discussions with panel members where, having taken appropriate advice, they could consider matters covered in part 2 of his scrutiny meeting. Councillor Thompson indicated that the informal meetings were a good opportunity that could not discuss informal meetings with those amendments. I would ask someone to propose the approval of the minutes as a correct record. Pre-approved amendment.
Chair, just before you do move to the vote on that, are we content with the amendment that the Commissioner has made? I think the point that Councillor Findlow has raised has certainly been a matter of some concern at Cheshire West for many years now, over the reliability of reported data when it comes to KSI figures on our local roads. And I think, given that this is quite a significant part of the Commissioner's proposals for the budget yet to come, I think we need assurances that those sort of past underreporting and questions over accuracy, we can have assurances that we are working with a data set that is a reflection of the reality of, sadly, too many tragedies on Cheshire's roads. I don't know what others feel, but I feel quite strongly about that.
Thanks for that, Lynn, and I take your point. If I could just go to Martin. Before I go to Martin, I can see chat in the chat room about the sound quality is not that great.
No, it's not. Very poor.
Could I ask if you're not speaking to pop your mute on, and hopefully that will improve it. And when you come on to speak, just knock it off. To pick up on Lynn's point, could I go to Martin? Because when this came across yesterday, I was quite content, and I don't know if the Deputy Chair's got a view, because he chaired the last meeting, that what we had recorded was pretty accurate. Martin, to be fair, has gone back to the recording of the meeting and assures me that, you know, there were no great inaccuracies, but he has made amendments going back to the verbatim script. Do you want to add anything on that, Martin?
Chairman, no, just to confirm, having checked back on the recording of the meeting, I would confirm that the words which you read out a few moments ago are an accurate reflection of what was actually said at the meeting.
Chairman?
I don't think they're that different to what was in the original minute, but they are more accurate, and as such, I would recommend that they are the version that the panel adopt.
Is that the Commissioner's amended? The Commissioner's amended minutes, Martin, you're advocating?
I am indeed, Councillor Finn.
And is Martin saying, Chairman, that the in answer to the answer given to my questions on page 9, bullet points 1 and 2, is in some way inaccurate or just incomplete?
What we're saying is the Commissioner's come back pointing out, or the Commissioner's office rather, that they felt there was some inaccuracies. The verbatim record now is as I've read out. Now, if we go to a vote to accept that or not, or if you have any comment on that, Councillor Finlay.
Well, I've forgotten it already because it isn't in front of me. I haven't got it in front of me. Could you read out the precise wording? Is Martin saying that the sentences in question are inaccurate?
I think it's fair to say, Councillor Finlow, that the Commissioner at the last meeting did not say that he was confident that in the content of the accuracy. What he did was clarify that it was something which he challenged and scrutinised the Chief Constable on. So, and the wording that the chairman read out a few moments ago is a more comprehensive version of what I've written.
There is a degree of inaccuracy which in that case must be corrected. That's correct, Councillor Findler.
Just for your information, Councillor Findler, I've just emailed you the amendment as it stands, so you have actually got a copy. Okay. I wouldn't dare try and access an email now. I'd be disconnected. Could I have a proposer that the amendment is, and indeed the minutes oratory record, please?
I'd propose that based on what's just been said.
I second that.
Was that Councillor?
I second that, Chair.
And thank you, Jan. Jan seconded. Just a hand in the air, all those in favour or any dissenters? Take that as everyone's in favour. Thanks for that. I know that was a little bit messy. Okay, moving on. We come to a new item, the Chair's announcement. And there's a couple of things I would wish to raise. I wrote this week to the Chief Constable as we officially received his retirement and thanked him for his service in the last 2 years. And I was saddened to see that someone just popped there on mute. I'm getting background. Yeah. And I did say that he has led the police force in the last 2 years through a very difficult period. If we remember when he took over the force, it was quite bruised, morale wasn't great. And to be fair, the organisation looks and feels very different now to what it did 2 years ago. I'm led to believe that there are, without giving away any confidences, some personal issues behind the decision, which I wouldn't wish to see at this time. But I wish Mr. Martland all the very best in his retirement. The second item I'd wish to bring to members' attention is approximately 3 weeks ago, I wrote to Meg Hillier, the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, as the vice chair of the National Association of Police, Fire and Crime Panels. As you know, I've taken a close interest in the national project the Home Office is running, the Emergency Service Network. And I've voiced some real concerns about the overspend, the slowness of delivery response right across the emergency services. And next Tuesday, I've been invited to a meeting with the Public Accounts Committee in my role as Vice Chairman of the National Association, along with the Chair of the Association. It is a private meeting, not a public meeting, but I would just wish to inform the panel of that. So if anything pops up, you don't think, what the dickens am I up to? Third point I'd just briefly like to raise is congratulations to Councillor Norman Plumtree-Walsh and his good lady Carol, who I understand he won't mind. They're going to receive some twins later in the year, and many congratulations from us all at the panel. Norman.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Chair.
Lovely.
Maybe 2 future members of the Police and Crime Panel. You never know.
Lovely news. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
If I move on to item 6, dates and times of the next panel meeting, I'll go over to Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Panel, this is the report which you receive every year at this meeting, which just proposes a pattern of meetings for the forthcoming municipal year. The pattern of meetings that has been recommended is broadly comparable with the pattern that you've had this year. In addition, I would just perhaps remind you that the next meeting of the panel was brought forward to fall outside the pre-election period. So there is already a meeting in your diaries for Friday the 12th of March. I had intended today to ask you if the elections were deferred again, whether you would want to push that meeting back, but the media coverage this morning would suggest that the government are going ahead with the elections in May, which I assume means that you would want to continue with the panel meeting on Friday the 12th of March. But it would be helpful perhaps just to get an indication, if the elections were postponed, whether you would want to push that back into April, which would be the more normal time that meeting would happen in the cycle.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think we have discussed that, and if they are further postponed, I think this morning took us a bit by surprise, and let's hope it does come off. But yeah, we'll give you the okay to push it back and come back to the panel if there are further delays. Okay, are we happy with item 6? Yeah.
Could I ask, Chairman, that Martin tries to ensure there are no clashes, particularly with the Cheshire Pension Fund on a Friday?
Thank you, Chairman. I have tried to do that, although when I made inquiries, the dates of the pension fund going into next year weren't all available. If it would appear later that there are issues with any of these dates, if panel members could let me know, I'm sure it would be possible with the panel's agreement to rearrange the meeting.
Chair, if you haven't noticed, Councillor Walker and Bob Foussart have managed to get in now, so we're all here.
I have, yeah. Well, welcome, Peter and Bob. Peter, I did say earlier I wasn't at the last meeting, so I haven't had I know we've spoken on the phone, I haven't had the opportunity to welcome you formally. Welcome. I know you'll make a great contribution, having served with you on the fire authority.
Thank you.
Okay. We move to item 7, the scrutiny pages. I'll just ask a question. Do members find this useful? I mean, there's almost 70 pages of details of the scrutiny meeting between the Commission and Chief Constable. I, along with Bob and Sally, generally attend those meetings. The reason for that is, you know, we're not elected members. We perhaps have more time than you do because you're busy dealing with ward issues, but they are very good meetings to get. I am conscious that almost 70 pages of scrutiny items is a lot of information. Have you any feelings on that? Is there a better way in which you could receive that information?
I think we said, Chairman, did we not, that one of the groups we'd set up would look into it. I can't remember which one.
Right. You're absolutely right, Councillor Finlow. Thanks for that. And I'll come to you, Councillor Delaney, in a second. I know the Task and Finish group, and I'm going to ask Sally for a brief report on that a little later in the meeting, are actually looking at this. And I know Martin's working as secretariat of that group, and we've had a few chats about it.
It's the top of page 6 on the minutes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, one of the things I've chatted about with Martin and Sally is that in report by exception with the scrutiny papers, the Commissioner's Office is a rag sheet, red, amber, green, with the Chief Constable delivering the.
I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's not very good sound reproduction. I don't know if others have got the same problem, Chairman.
I certainly have. Yeah,
and we're talking about the MOU, the draft MOU, so it's
Yeah.
of particular interest to me, and I can't hear you very well at all.
Evan, can I just mention that sometimes when people have a bad reception, if you turn your camera off but leave your audio on, that sometimes is helpful, because you might want to just try that and see whether that helps.
Can I've just unplugged the Bluetooth speaker. Is that better now?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've just discovered what the fault was. Good. Let me move on, and hopefully things will improve. Just on this, and to come to Councillor Finlow's point, and I know the work Sally's leading on with the Task and Finish group, one of the things we're looking at is anything that is reported as read in terms of the Chief Constable's delivery of the police and crime plan. And if we bear in mind, most of our raison d'etre is to ensure the effective delivery of that police and crime plan. If it was reported to us, the areas that were read within the delivery of the police and crime plan, that is where they're failing to deliver on time and achieve the outcomes. We could then seek assurance off the Commissioner that he had put, or she had put, the control measures in place to ensure the effective delivery of that objective and outcome. Does that sort of make sense? It may sound easy, but if we work towards that objective for the future, it's going to give us very clear lines of inquiry with the Commissioner. All right, Councillor Delaney, if I come to you because you had a point to make.
No, thank you, Chair. It's going back to your original request as to what we thought about the scrutiny papers. And for those, I think, and I count myself as one of them who can't always get to the scrutiny meetings, I found the papers extremely useful indeed. I mean, there may be a better way of communicating that information. Your suggestion of some sort of traffic light system would be absolutely fine. But just on a personal basis, I think the papers are very good and very useful.
Yeah, Chair, I'd agree with that. I like to see the papers. Sorry, Ev.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Norman Plumpton-Morse.
I think I'd like to echo that point, that these papers are particularly useful to see. Although for me, I've got a few points from this morning on the road accident figures, and particularly around Community Speedwatch. Now, obviously for me, not being able to get to a lot of these other meetings, which I'd really like to, I would like this, I don't know if it's possible, to actually lump a section in with the PCC scrutiny when he's actually here doing his bit, for me or anybody else to actually raise these points then, because it seems to be arranged in a way that's kind of before the scrutiny of the Commissioner, and therefore has some kind of natural line underneath it, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I do. And I know Martin and Sally are listening to all these comments, and it will help shape the work of that group that are producing the MOU. Could I come to Mrs. Hardwick, Sally?
Yeah, you're actually preempting a lot of what I'm going to be reporting on, which is that, I mean, I asked Martin, did the reporting of those meetings cause him a lot of additional work, and the paperwork is so big? And he said, no. Now, we've moved from 3 monthly scrutiny meetings to monthly ones. I think, and we all agreed that they are extremely useful for those who can't be there to see what's going on, to ensure that the Commissioner is scrutinising the Chief Constable, and for members of the public to watch. So, I mean, we already decided that, to be honest, the scrutiny meetings stand, and the minutes of the scrutiny meetings stand because they're so useful to other people.
Okay.
So you've, in a way, preempted what I was going to say. And the other thing is...
Apologies for that, Sally, but I felt it important that members, you know, have an opportunity to comment on such a lot of work.
Yeah. but as I say, you've preempted a lot of what I was going to say. I mean, basically, we decided the agenda was a very short one, and the meeting wasn't all that long either, to be honest. But we decided the way ahead was to continue with the scrutiny meetings and to writing them up, but to actually ask the Commissioner to, and I mean, I am preempting very much what I was going to say, but we're going to ask that in advance of the Police and Crime Panel meeting, he give us an update on how he's progressing the achievement of the Chief Constable of the policing plan and his priorities, so that we have actually something to hang on to and focus on as a panel.
Okay, thanks, Sally.
A lot of what I was going to say.
It wasn't the intention to have an update on the task and finish group at this stage, but I will come to you later, and I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah, I know. It's just so many of these issues are relevant to each other that I think, in a way, that what the MOU will do, if we can achieve it, is pull it all together.
Thanks, Sally. Cheers. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Evan. You'll please have to forgive me. Some of the standard operating practices are a little new to me. I will catch up, honest. Can anybody tell me whether these sessions are actually webcast? I did have a look on the Commissioner's website, and I couldn't find any links to those. But
I think I can answer you, Councillor Riley. Is you'll be delighted to know they're on Skype.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
And to attend the meeting, Martin generally advises us that a meeting is coming up. The other thing members may not be aware of, I also attend the management board, which you can attend as a member of the public, which is an incredibly useful insight into what's happening. And we can attend that in part one only, but it is a useful insight. So Martin now alerts the members, the management board and scrutiny board.
Could I follow up on that then, Chair? I don't know obviously how far the task and finish group has got on this, but I think given the situation that is sort of Manchester finds itself in, it would be interesting to see a recommendation from this panel for that meeting to be recorded. I think the minutes are, very interesting and very valuable, but sometimes it's the things that are discussed, but not necessarily. You can't minute the sentiments and the feelings of a meeting. Whereas it would be a lot easier for me, for example, to be able to, listen to that when I'm doing other things. So I could actually, listen to the full transcript rather than just read 90 minutes, which probably takes about the same amount of time, to be honest. So could we think, in the interest of openness and transparency, that that's a recommendation that we might want to think about through the task and finish group, please?
Yeah, I'm sure Sally will take a note of that, Martin. Also, it's a legitimate point to put transparency, to put those meetings recorded on a public format. Okay, I think Councillor Judah's asking to speak as well. Councillor Judah.
Thank you, Chair. I think the time has passed, actually, because I'm obviously not using the correct procedure for wanting to ask a question. I was just going to say that I find those scrutiny papers extremely useful. What I've learnt, though, is that I need to set more than one evening aside to go through them, which is fine. I can do that. But I do think that we want more detail of policing in Cheshire East, and that's what we're getting in these documents, and I find them really useful. I've got quite a number of questions that I would like to ask from those things, and I'm not sure what the process is or the procedure is to do that. Can we ask the Commissioner for updates on certain things? I'm thinking about the stalking unit and also the mental health of young people in custody. Are we going to be able to do that today, or do we write to him, or does it come from the committee? Or so just some clarity really on how to go forward on those. But otherwise, I would say, yeah, let's keep getting the reports, but we maybe need to set more time aside to go through them thoroughly. Thank you.
Just to answer your question, Councillor Judah, and it is very relevant. And I think the scrutiny papers, certainly for me and attending the meeting, do pull out some big issues. Now, there's two ways. If you've got a really big, complex strategic issue, it's good to put it in writing to the Commissioner, and we have a process being able to do that. But certainly the scrutiny papers should prompt members just for the impromptu question. And by all means, if there are issues that you've picked up on today, do ask the Commissioner questions. You know, they'll be uppermost in his mind, of course, because he's recently scrutinised the Chief Constable on it. So it's not springing something on something. It's something that's current and very relevant. And I'd encourage everyone to take questions from those scrutiny papers. Okay, is there any further wish to speak on that?
Yes, Evan, I'd like to say something.
Sorry, Bob. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
I would do watch these meetings. It's great having the minutes later on because there's so much talk in the meetings. You can't see the wood for the trees. So when you get these, the issue is, as Laura's just raised, is how do we question the Commissioner on what's in these reports? Because we haven't got enough time, especially when when a yes/no answer ends up being 5 minutes from him. It's of no value to us whatsoever. So, I mean, like Norman, I've got stuff about the questions I want to ask him with regards to the policing, traffic policing, and how the figures have dropped so drastically. But I'm sure with the precepts and everything else that comes, we're not going to get a lot of questions in this morning at all.
Yeah, I know you've raised the matter previously. I think we're all aware of it. The length of the meetings, the virtual meetings, I think we've had up to 4 hours. All good questions and relevant points. And I take the point, and we seek brevity from the Commissioner at all points. And we actually try and make questions as concise as possible, and we'll move the business on. I would encourage members to ask those questions, but I do take the point. Time is very tight.
So do we have an alternative method then if we can't ask the questions at the meeting? I think there needs to be a way that we can raise all this and follow up.
Yes, sorry, Bob. The alternative is to put them in writing, and get them across to the Commissioner. So I know some members have a feeling that, you're giving pre-information and allows him to produce a verbatim response, and they prefer a more spontaneous style. Certainly, I think there are issues where it is useful to pre-submit a question.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but the problem with pre-submitted questions then is that quite often members of the public won't see what the question is, and the issue isn't addressed in a public forum rather than being done over emails and messages.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to get more clarity around that with some of the guidance in the Memorandum of Understanding and Task and Finish group, if you will have to move on. Sally?
Yeah, I think the whole, sorry, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the problem with pre-submitted questions, it's a very good idea on strategic issues. It gives the Commissioner time to prepare his answer, etc. But they haven't got the same sort of public visibility that the questions in meetings have. I mean, if you're talking big strategic issues, don't the public want to know about these? Or do they just want to know about the numbers of traffic accidents in their locality? I'm sorry, but pre-submitted questions, if we have a register, and there was some discussion at the tasking group about what length of time we give him, and it has to be agreed because some questions will need a lot of research and therefore will take a long time to answer. Some will not. Some can be answered straight away. So we had a big discussion, did we not, Laura? I think on what meaningful delay was, what the word meaningful actually meant. But but I am worried that the public is not seeing that we are doing our job properly of holding him to account. When we are asking these questions, but we're asking them in a way that the public do not see. And I don't know any way around it.
I think we're taking on board all these points and the value of papers and scrutiny and everything else. And believe me, I attended a couple of other panel meetings, and the quality of questioning and member involvement in Cheshire is very good. No one's perfect, but we are dealing with some, good strategic and tactical issues at the same time. Has anyone else got Councillor Bissett?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to the discussion, I think Bob raised some very valid points, and so did Sally. I think, the combination effect of that certainly has woken me up to this. This is an issue. I mean, we are supposed to be open and transparent, which we all are. It's all at our heart. It's in our heart space. But we really have to demonstrate that regularly. Now, I'm thinking about these scrutiny items. What is stopping any member rolling those questions over to the next meeting, because they're of a general theme, if you like, and asking those questions at the next meeting as part of the answer session, and actually referring to the scrutiny meeting of that particular date? I can't see any problem with that.
No, there's absolutely no reason at all. You can't take them over to the next meeting, which would allow you time to do a bit more research perhaps into that issue. Having said that, you may have another load of scrutiny papers by that time. But if you're pushing it to the next meeting there's absolutely no reason why that can't be done.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Riley.
Thanks, Evan. Just really as a suggestion, if we could, perhaps do a technology check and make sure all members of the panel had, a stable opportunity to use something like Teams to access these meetings. There are all sorts of tools on Teams for us to be able to collate questions. So we could set up a thread that everybody could see, where we could all submit our questions that will be open to all of us, and then we could perhaps ask the office a call to have a look at, help Sally to make some recommendations in terms of how those questions were put to the commissioner for him to respond to. So I think there's two issues here, isn't there? There's the asking the questions and getting the reply, because actually more often than not the reply prompts a further supplementary question, which could actually be the impromptu element of the questioning process. Could we perhaps have a think about that and look at some of the technology options that would allow each of us to table questions literally at any time they come to us, rather than just having to prepare them for this meeting and submit them? The text there, we just ought to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just enlightened me as to some of the additional functionality of Teams, Lynn. And I noticed Martin was taking some notes, and I think I'll have a chat with Martin and look how we might be able to better utilise some of that functionality, because I think that's a very good idea. Are there any other members wish to comment on that? I'm not sure, Chairman, about reserving spontaneity to mere supplementary questions, but it's something worthy of further consideration. I mean, the group under Sally's chairmanship was going to look into how scrutiny management board issues are raised, and hasn't had the opportunity to do so in any detail yet. But what's happened today to management board minutes? There are just scrutiny minutes here. Haven't there been any meetings of the management board? Yeah, there has recently been a meeting of the management board, which I attended. It's a very valid question. I don't think, I'll go over to you, Martin, we've never received minutes that I'm aware of to management board.
Chairman, from memory, and I would need to check back to be quite sure, but from memory, I think the panel has only ever received the paperwork for the scrutiny meetings. there is no reason why other paperwork couldn't be provided. But I think in the past it just has been the scrutiny papers that have been provided to panel members.
I seem to remember them in the past, but that could be checked up on. But I think we should have.
You could be correct. I just don't recall.
Okay, I think we should have them though. And anyway, they're going to look into the part 2 because quite a lot of it is part 2. And we're going to look into how we can access that, because I think that's quite important, particularly when significant parts of agendas are part 2. We're not really doing the job if we can't access it in camera ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Finlow. We'll certainly look into that. I think I need to go back and check, but we can extract management board minutes from Commissioner's website, at least part 1, as it stands at the moment. Okay, have I any other comments before I move on to item 8, the work programme? Just before we do that, thank you for that, because it's given me a lot of insight, and I'm sure others in the room, but clearly those scrutiny items and the meetings, I particularly like the idea of recording those meetings as well, so they are accessible to especially the elected members who may not be available as the independent co-opted members are to attend that. If I can move on to item 8, the work programme, and go to you, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, at this time of the year, with the cycle of meetings only having just been agreed, the work programme is fairly light, and I think this again is a document which will be looked at by the Task and Finish group that is being chaired by Mrs. Hardwick, because I think it's all part of that overall relationship with the Commissioner and the way in which information is shared between the Commissioner and the panel. But the document you have on page 83 of your pack today just outlines the next meeting of the panel, which I mentioned before, which is coming up quite quickly on the 12th of March, an informal meeting which is in the diary with the Commissioner on the 24th of March, and the next routine scrutiny meeting which the Commissioner is holding on the 3rd of March. Obviously, we will add the dates that you've agreed this morning to the work programme, and I will be in conversations with the Commissioner's office over the coming weeks to get a programme of informal meetings for the coming year.
Okay, thanks for that, Martin. Just on the 12th of March informal meeting, just solicit views really.
Chairman, that's a formal meeting.
Sorry, the informal meeting on the 24th of March. Does anyone have any views or a particular deep dive issue that we'd like to look at that we can put to the Commissioner's office? Or if you haven't got one at the moment, could you let Martin and myself know?
Chair, could I just, sorry, I can't get onto the.
Davidson, yeah.
Could I just ask, I'm concerned about complaints to the police, and I have to say this is a personal issue, but I'm very disappointed with the response that the police have had to a complaint that we made as a family, and I'm not happy with the police's response at all. This is going back to April of last year, and I had to phone this week to get to get a response and say that I was coming to this meeting today. I think they're very, very poor at responding to complaints. That's just, I don't know how the others feel. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Davidson. I could see Martin's taking a note of the complaints issue.
Evan, can I make a comment?
I've got you. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, they've announced that the local government and PCC elections are going to take place on the 6th of May.
Yeah.
So we've got to think about PERDA and everything else relating to that on the meeting in April. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or coming towards that area.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to drop your hand, Bob? Thanks. Does anyone else wish to speak?
We're also going to have, Chairman, a confirmation hearing, aren't we? During PERDA, probably.
Yeah, I think we've got a date set, haven't we, Martin, for the confirmation hearing?
Chairman, I've had informal discussions with my contacts in the Commissioner's office over the possible timetable for a confirmation hearing for the new Chief Constable. I spoke to my contact at the Commissioner's office late yesterday. They aren't yet quite in a position where we can go public with that date, but offline after the meeting, I will email members of the panel with the likely date for the confirmation hearing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Martin.
And I see, Chairman, that the informal meetings, and now it says all at 1:30 because we all convened at 1 o'clock, which is what we were told for the last meeting. So that's now changed permanently.
Has that been sprung upon us, Martin, or is that something that can be flexed to go to?
I would need to check back with the Commissioner's office if the panel members would find an earlier start more convenient. I can certainly approach the Commissioner's office to see if that is possible.
I don't mind what time it is, provided we know it. We didn't seem to know last time. That's the point.
We'll check on that for you, Councillor Finlay. All right, thank you. Councillor, did I have Councillor Riley before Councillor Norman Plumpton-Walsh?
I think Norman was before me, Chair.
Right.
So
thank you. And Norman.
Muted.
You're on mute, Norman.
Sorry, Chair. The last informal meeting that I attended was obviously very recently. The 1:30 for me was better because I was able to finish work, so I was able to split my work day in half and then have some semblance of a lunch before then attending that meeting. So being a little bit selfish about this, that's quite a good time for me.
Okay, take note of that. Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Again, apologies, Chair, if this is something that I should know, but I've not had any formal induction to this panel, so forgive me. Does the panel have any insight to the recruitment of the next Chief Constable? For example, do we know how many candidates have expressed an interest? Do we know what the long list is, the short list is? Any information at all, or are we completely in the hands of the Commissioner in terms of who he appoints?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Riley. At the moment, the only insight I have is from bordering police forces by word of mouth. The answer to the question is no, we don't, and it might well be a key line of inquiry to pursue with the Commissioner. And indeed ask questions today exactly where it's up to, without naming names. But historically, I think alert members to an article in Policing Insight where the average number of applications for a Chief Constable's post currently are 2. You're fishing in a very, very small pond. The speed with which they appear to move causes me concern, and maybe we seek some clarification off the Commissioner on that today. Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Riley?
It does. I mean, I think we probably all have concerns about just how attractive a proposition Cheshire is, and obviously we're looking for high caliber candidates, or candidates with very significant potential to stay with us and sort of add real value to the post. But we'll remain to be convinced on that.
The problem, Chairman, is an insufficient field. We found this out before, which is beyond our control or the Commissioner's control.
Yeah, there are some fascinating insights as to why previous candidates who are eligible for Chief Constable's post don't really want them anymore, and that there are a number of issues, which I'll leave to your own imagination. But it is a mixed bag of issues, not just a single issue. Okay, is there anyone else wish to speak on that issue around the work programme, item 8?
Okay, if we can therefore move on to item 9 and
Chairman, just sorry if I could just interrupt before the panel do move on. I just wonder, Chairman, were you going to mention the agenda for the next meeting of the panel on the 12th of March and the possibility of discussing police and fire commissioners?
Yeah, thanks for the prompt, Martin. I've got a note elsewhere in the agenda, but I'll certainly raise it there. It's all right. Part of matters arising out of the minutes from the last meeting was, I think Sally raised the relevant issue about the panel's position on fire authorities and the future governance models. Now, we don't have a position, and we're still awaiting. It was due to be announced before Christmas. It's still not been announced. Phase 1 of the Home Secretary's review into the role of police and crime commissioners. Part of the terms of reference did state the government's desire to achieve the long-term ambition of governance of fire and rescue services. Now, read into that what you will, but that announcement still hasn't come. But on Sally's issue, and I fully accept it was raised in the minutes, and I've spoken to Martin about it, just put it to the panel. Would it be helpful at the next meeting? The chairman of the National Association of Police, Fire and Crime Panels is actually an independent co-opted member of the Essex Police and Crime Panel. And if you chose and would like, he could come to our next meeting and give a 10 to 15 minute presentation on how that governance model works in Essex. Would that be something members would support?
Well, Chairman, can I speak? I mean, I raised this matter, Chairman, and it's at the top of page 7 of the minutes.
Yeah.
Now, you're chairman of your national association, for whom you're his vice chairman. He is, having read some time ago some of the National Association's submissions, particularly the submission to the Part 1 of the Home Office inquiry, they're 100% enthusiastically, if not further overboard, in favour of an amalgamation and the abolition of the existing fire authorities. So I do think if we're going to invite him, we need someone to balance it out. I'm not sure that's the best way forward, really, because we want to know what's right for Cheshire, not Essex, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, another way of looking at this is, well, we wait till we get phase 1 of the Home Secretary's review of police and crime commissioners to see, because there are some people who feel that it's going to be mandated on commissioners. And our commissioner's point and position, which I respect, is that he is neither way until such time as he is mandated to do that. But if you don't feel it's useful to bring someone or, you know, another person, as Councillor Finlow is suggesting, to the next meeting, or indeed to wait for the Home Secretary's response to the review before we sort of debate our own position, it's really down to the panel. Has anyone else got a view? So do we feel, given Sally's proposal for the next meeting, to discuss the panel's position, because it seems to me we don't have a position and we're not mandated to, so is there any relevance in doing that, or we can end up with just a mixed bag of opinion?
I've had my hand up and it doesn't seem to want to stay up.
I can't see it. I've got
it's okay, no worries.
Dave,
I mean, look, okay, in many respects it's the elephant in the room. You know, we've got the local authorities, the 4 local authorities are obviously going to form a view. I'm sure this panel will go on to will want to form a view, whatever that is. And it seems that some of the panels have already formed a view. So, you know, I don't think it's a topic that we can simply shy away from. I'm personally, I'm happy to hear anybody's opinions, whether it's the chairman of the National Association or somebody from the Home Office. The timing, I don't know, but very happy to hear it. But I think at some point the panel may wish to form a view, because this is a fundamental issue. We're talking here about the Fire Authority and the potential of amalgamation. I think the government have in mind it's going to happen anyway, but I'd very much welcome an opportunity at some point for us to discuss this. Not necessarily from the chairman of the National Association, but I'd welcome an opportunity for us to discuss it and perhaps decide, once we've discussed it, if we would like to form a view.
Okay, I've got Bob Fusart and then Councillor Walker. Bob.
Yes, Evan, thanks. My view is that, fine, next meeting we have a presentation from Essex, and we counter presentation as to why we shouldn't do it, and then leave till the meeting after to discuss it, so that we've got time to consider what's been presented to us.
Okay. Councillor Walker, before we make a decision on that, can I come to you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, can do.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure you could. Yeah, I mean, I want to become better informed. So I think talking to as many people as we can before we come to a conclusion is worthwhile. So the gentleman from Essex, I would certainly welcome a presentation from him.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Before I just pull this one together, there's some good debate here and a way forward. Is there anyone else wishes to speak on this issue? Okay, I like Bob's idea of someone opposed to the formation of fire under the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we could have 10-minute slot for, 10-minute against, and then take it to the next meeting to debate. And I think between myself and Martin, we can, you know, I've certainly got someone, I think, who would speak in favour of a governance model of a police and fire commissioner. And I'm sure it won't be very difficult to speak to someone, get someone to speak who would be opposed to it.
We may have Councillor Finlaw, of course. He'll do that for us.
I was going to suggest that, but I thought I might.
Well, I'm not predetermined in the matter. I want to see a balanced debate on the matter. I mean, there is the timing factor. I don't know when is it the Home Secretary, is the relevant ministers going to pronounce on part one?
Yeah, they should have done it.
The inquiry. Yeah. So, I mean, and what about our fire authority themselves? I'm not a member. Others here are members. What's their view? Do they believe in self-abolition, or are they propagating, are they advocating their retention, or perhaps even reform? I don't know. But I'd like to know what the fire authority think about the proposal.
Yeah, I think I know what they think, but I agree we can get some feedback from that source. Councillor Walker, thank you, Councillor Finlaw.
No, I was going to make the same point that we ought to ask somebody, or maybe more than one person from the Cheshire Fire Authority, to get their views. I mean, I know one quite well, and I know he's strongly against the abolition of the Fire Authority.
Okay, thanks for that. On the basis we have a proposal, I'll get a proposer in a minute, that we at our next meeting have someone speak for the governance model of Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner, and someone opposed to it. If you could leave that with us, and then we will go on to the next meeting to debate that in full with a view to arriving at a position for the Police and Crime panel to take on this issue. If that's clear, can I have a proposer to go forward?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to move that we have two speakers. One speaker suggesting that it would be a good model, and one that it wouldn't. At the end of that, the panel can then decide what it wants to do. We might want to carry on not having an opinion, or we might want to have opinion. But let's have two people to give two different perspectives on the subject, and then we'll take it from there. I move.
That's a proposal. Can I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Councillor Norman Plumpton Walsh just got there before you, Councillor Walker. Thank you. Second. All those in favour of taking that approach, which seems very balanced and sensible.
Aye.
I see a number of hands. Are there any dissenters? No, I think we carried with that. You happy with that, Martin?
Yes, Chair.
Could I just summarise at this point that having served 35 years in the Fire and Rescue Service in Cheshire, I know what a committed fire authority we have and the added value they give to making Cheshire safer and the commitment that they have. And I have the utmost respect for both the officers and people who serve on that. And, you know, there is no preset agenda here. We're trying to follow and envisage what is future government's guidance and make the best. But I think we're doing the right thing by becoming very informed about the challenges, because there are governance challenges and all sorts of things that could come our way as a result of where we think the Home Secretary's review is going. So where we've arrived at here, I think, is eminently sensible.
Chair, he may not be showing on your screen, but Bob Foussart has had his hand up for some time.
Sorry, got you, Bob. Sorry, if you, yeah, over to you, Bob.
Sorry, Chair. This damn thing doesn't tell me whether I'm up or down. I've got my hand up to second the motion, but you've got somebody else, Norman got in there before me, so ignore my hand. Sorry.
All right, just click on your hand, Bob, and it'll go down. That's it. Okay, I might move on to item 9 and invite Police and Crime Commissioner to the presentation on the proposed precept.
Chair, can we have a couple of minute break, just a comfort break?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
2 or 3 minutes, yeah?
Yep. Can we adjourn for 2 minutes and come back?
Yeah, good.
I got this Barry who went to see, and he got his miserable debts. I'm trying to say, I don't get this fucking job that you like, and but I sort of like let him. I thought, I'm terribly sorry that I have to be subjected to me.
Morning, Chairman. Morning, Martin.
Yeah, hi David, how are you doing?
Good morning.
Really well, thank you. How are you?
Bearing up, yeah.
Good. Good to see you. Good to see you back on your feet, Evan. Looking really well.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I've had a good bit of a debate this morning on some of the issues, which I'm sure you'll have a look at. But I think we're getting there, fair to say.
Excellent, excellent. As always, I'll do what I can to kind of help and make sure we're getting the information we need. I did catch the end of the chat then about the fire service, which I think is a really interesting debate, but actually I think it's probably kind of out of my hands and out of the panel's hand where that's probably going to end up from my understanding. But I think we should certainly push together to kind of form a common position and try to exert our influence. So really kind of welcome that that's on the agenda, Chair.
Yeah, I thought there were some good ideas there that if we bring in someone who's clearly going to be supportive, and I do know things, and Essex Fire and Rescue Service did have some serious issues, and Joe Turton, the new chief exec, has just had a quite stunning HMRC FRS report in terms of improvement of that authority. But I'm also aware that Cheshire's one of the highest performing fire services in the country, and there'll be those who say if it's not broke, don't try and fix it. And I respect both sides. Okay, have we got Martin with us? Okay, are we ready to reconvene, Martin?
We are, Chair.
Okay, can I welcome the Commissioner and several of his staff who are very welcome, who I can see, and move us to item 9 of the agenda and ask the Commissioner to make the presentation on his proposed precept.
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members, officers and team members in attendance. It's good to see that you're all looking well in current times, which obviously we continue to worry about. But I do thank members for being here today, for fitting this meeting in following the budget meeting at the end of January between myself and the Chief Constable. And I do look forward to your consideration of precept proposals that I'm putting forward today. Chairman, if I may, I intend to just have some real kind of informal conversation to begin with, and then over to your good self for your kind of questions and answers. But just to say, obviously, I've sent you quite an in-depth letter about the budget and the precepts this year, which I take it has been shared with panel members. I've forwarded the full management board financial papers relating to all aspects of the budget, which we've been able to do for this meeting this year. I know in previous years, when statements have been rather late, you've not had them with a bit of disappointment. We have ensured you've got all those this year for your fullest consideration. I did enjoy the informal panel where we managed to have quite a full discussion on the budget with finance experts of the constabulary being Wendy and the OPCC being Claire. They're both thankfully with us today for any technical questions on the budget, which I thank them for making arrangements to do so. So if I may, Chair, I'll just have a few brief words. I have took your directions in previous years about how you'd like my presentation to the panel to appear. I know we don't like overt politics, so I'm taking your lead to stay away from that for today's presentation. What I will kind of say is that this budget presentation is taken on the full advice of my chief advisor in policing, who is the Chief Constable of Cheshire Constabulary, Darren Martland. And, you know, Evan, I'm sure you'll join with me in thanking Darren, because this will be his kind of final budget setting period with us as a team as he heads towards hopefully a very happy retirement. So Darren has been my chief advisor throughout this process. Within that, Darren relies on things like the strategic policing requirement, those kind of national strategic issues that he must have due regard to. He also relies on the force management statement, which is Darren's assessment of the needs, demands and possible funding in which to achieve those over coming years. So Darren is my chief advisor in these matters. But beyond that, I hope the panel will see their strong role in this. The reliance of Cheshire Constabulary on the precept, colleagues, you will see is bigger than ever. As government has kind of reduced the amount of funding, shall I say, over the last decade, the kind of split between government funding has come down. The precept which you as a panel have supported over the past few years has had to come up in order to protect policing and protect our communities. And that is the backdrop, very factually, that we may rely on in this case. I hope that the panel will see many of the issues that you have actually referred to me over the past couple of years in the budget of last year and this year. Challenges you have made to me have been addressed. They have been put in the budget. You'll note last year that there were kind of 6 or 7 main priorities which I've scrutinised the delivery of at every scrutiny meeting with the Chief Constable this year. And you'll be glad to know that those will be considered finally in the March meeting, and they are all looking very, very positive and green on our flanks, which means they have been achieved. My part in that is merely holding the constabulary to account in delivering those rather than delivering those myself. I know you'll be fully aware of those, but from your attendance at regular scrutiny meetings, I know that you've picked that up, and I consider that an efficient way to hold the chief to account. I'll be doing the same this year. The main priorities you'll see in the budget papers are split into the police and crime plan priority areas. They're very clear what they're there to achieve. They do relate to strategic policing requirements as required by the Home Secretary, advised by the Chief Constable to myself. They do relate to the efficient and effective management within the force management statement. Beyond that, as I've said, they do take into account many issues that the panel have raised with me and push me on, very often in line with public wishes. And they do rely very heavily on public support. Now, you'll be aware that this year has been tremendously difficult in terms of the challenges of consulting with our public. The challenges that have been kind of caused by COVID, I don't need to tell you guys in your roles in and out of this panel have been absolutely huge. And I think it's, I'm sure the panel will join in me in thanking all of our public services and communities for how they've worked together to overcome them under your kind of leadership and all those in public office. So looking at that kind of consultation, more difficult position than ever. And I'm glad this year the Chief Constable has been centrally involved in that consultation with me. The consultation has been absolutely huge. My teams have put massive efforts into this consultation this year. You know, despite the limitations we've had upon us, we have got over 2,200 consultation responses to the budget survey and the policing priority survey. Now, they've worked as one this year to recognise public priorities whilst recognising views on the precepts. I'm really pleased to say that, and this is quite a common theme throughout my tenure of consultation, over 2/3 of residents responding to that consultation and a high rate of response have supported a increase in the precept of up to £15 a year. I know this is sometimes technical, but that is for an average Band D property. So to give you reassurance, for instance, those in Band A properties would be paying up to £10 a year, and those in higher banding properties would pay up to a maximum of £30 a year additionally, is my understanding. So the consultation has been good. It's been limited in terms of face-to-face with the actual members of the public. You'll know we usually do a complete tour of the county, supermarkets, town halls, busy centres, inside and outside. Having said that, we have put on a number of virtual public engagement sessions. I've been very proud to stand kind of shoulder to shoulder with the Chief Constable at those sessions. We've answered a tremendous amount of questions about policing, so a lot of opinions about priorities, and all of that has fed into the budget setting process. Just an interesting factor that panel members may wish to know, and I'd really like to share with you, is despite the difficulties of the last few years, when we interviewed in the consultations about how safe people felt within their communities, and we use this kind of sliding scale of 1 to 10, rather than saying, do you feel safe or do you not feel safe? It gives a more qualitative answer. Nearly 4/5 of people said they felt safe at a level of 7 to 10, where 1 is unsafe and 10 is really safe. And that for me gave a really kind of good feel for policing in Cheshire. So I was really happy to receive that feedback. Again, kind of setting my 4th budget in this role. I'm glad to still carry that level of public support. I've got to say that public support isn't a measure of support for me, and I'll be very clear with you about that. It's what comes through really strongly each year in those conversations is the public support for policing as a whole function in Cheshire. I think it's a service that Cheshire residents should be proud of and largely are proud of. It's a service that cares about its people and its residents. I want the panel to realise your importance in this process though, because this year, just referring, and I won't get into specifics, Chair, because it will be far too long and we need to get questions and answers. But it does refer to a very important process where this year, the government funding for Cheshire does extend to replacing some of the officers that we've lost over the last decade. I've got to say it doesn't fully cover all the costs of those, and it doesn't fully cover any costs of price, inflationary increases, pressures, areas that we need real investment with that you've assessed in the last year. And that does rely on us having a local precept. Without the local precepts, we can't carry on as we are. This precept then, in summary, does represent a little bit of a recovery in policing in Cheshire. And please don't think for a moment I'm going to not having increased numbers of police officers, because I'm not. I've campaigned for these, you've campaigned for these. This is what we want to see. I just have to give you a fairly honest opinion of what we need to do based on the Chief's advice, based on your experience, based on the public's view to keep Cheshire safe over the next year. I've done that. I think it's fairly well spelt out in the report. My letter to you, my summary, all the documents that have been sent, all the in-depth answers that have come out of last week's informal panel meeting. So without further ado, Chairman, may I kind of commend the reports to you. They do involve a tremendous amount of work from everybody in the constabulary, the public and yourselves in considering these. And I really look forward to hopefully your usual support after some fairly firm questions and scrutiny, because I respect that's the role of the panel. So thank you, Chairman, and look forward to a discussion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Can I just say as well, thank you for the informal briefing that quite a few of the members were able to attend, and the value of that. And you have also supplied additional information on request to members in further breakdown of the budget and where that will be spent should the panel choose to support the precept proposal. The only thing I don't know whether I missed it,
during your consultation period, and I think you were quite fleet at foot in the release of the lockdown, you and the Chief Constable were out on the streets, as I recall it, and some of the members came to some of your sessions. It is quite an achievement, 2,200 consultations during a period of lockdown. I know how other commissioners have been struggling to get that qualitative feedback to be able to form a proposal for a precept. So, you know, we do appreciate the efforts that have been made in that area and the work of your staff in doing that. Could you just touch on, because I think in the informal briefing for the members, part of that consultation was to establish the priorities of policing. And I think it came down to, is it 4 or 5 issues? Could you just highlight what they were, Commissioner?
Absolutely. Just taking myself off mute, Chairman. Yes, we did engage as much as we could, and Chairman, you're absolutely right. We have one of the highest consultation rates in the region and the country. The kind of top priorities that come back from residents time and time again through the surveys and conversations are police visibility, because people recognise, I think, both professionally and with local kind of feeling on this, that visibility gives assurance and it prevents crime. Dealing with serious and organised crime, including things like county lines. Dealing with antisocial behaviour, which I know the panel often recognises a symptom of serious organised crime and the disruption and the harm that serious organised crime brings to our communities. Things like knife crime, you know, bullying, harassment, no-go areas within our communities that we're not prepared to accept in Cheshire. And Chairman, the one that runs through every community, regardless of its population, its wealth, its geography, etc., which of course, Chair, is kind of road safety. There isn't a community in Cheshire that I consult with that doesn't put this as a top priority. Now, of course, within that, Chairman, that there are the top priorities of the residents, and then there's sometimes a little bit of a drift between those and the strategic policing requirements that come from the Home Secretary to the Chief Constable to myself. They are often more strategic issues such as modern slavery. Again, we did touch on serious organised crime on both of those, terrorism. I think the point I'd just make very briefly to connect those, Chair, is none of these strategic issues happen outside of our communities. You know, even the big ticket items like terrorism, modern slavery, they happen in our communities with our people. And the recognition that I've got very clearly is that our communities need to help us police, because if our communities get together with a trusting local name-face police service, we outnumber those that are causing the harm hundreds to one. If it's the police against, if you like, the criminals alone, it makes it a very difficult job. So that public interaction is absolutely vital, and I know that you guys recognise that. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise known as Peelian principles, and we do get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
I've got Councillor Delaney and Bob Fusar. Councillor Delaney.
Chair, I had my hand up first.
Sorry, Rob, over to you. I'm glad everyone's so keen to question.
Can I go first, Chair?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I just want to make before we launch into the and delve into the detail of the letter or the document, I just want to make a couple of general comments and maybe ask 1 or 2 questions, none of which are meant to be a criticism of the police commissioner or indeed the 4 respective local authorities that are in the room. But I think most people in here would agree with me that any levy, any tax of this nature is highly regressive, and it is the poorer communities that suffer the most, relatively speaking. And I often find in attending these meetings, certainly over the last 5 or 7 years, not these specific meetings, but meetings at this level of this ilk, that we all subscribe to that view, but it's more of a nodding dog principle, and on it goes. And the people I represent really are not getting that voice out there when it comes to regressive taxation. So, I mean, the question for the Commissioner would be, having agreed that it's a highly regressive tax, would be that your consultation, which you claim, and I've no reason to doubt, you claim to have 3/4 of the people, 2,200, were largely in favour of the precept increase. Have you any idea of the type of individual across the social strata that you actually gain those consultation answers from? Because it is usually the more articulate, higher level middle class people that are quick off the block with the consultations. And, you know, I want the voice of people who have either missed it or you know, have not bothered to contribute. I mean, how do you feel about that question? Does it, you know, is it a reason that you've got a higher people in favour of your precept increase?
Martin, if I may, Chair, and Martin, it's a question that strikes at the heart of everything that we believe in, isn't it, as elected representatives? And what I can say this time is, you're absolutely right. Sorry, Bob. You're absolutely right on the issue and to ask the questions. We've really tried to reach out this time, even with the limitations that we've had with COVID, to underrepresented groups, to groups, for instance, that have issues with accessibility generally to policing, to groups of young people in the Youth Commission in Cheshire. I've really pushed the consultation as hard as I can. Bob, does it give us a perfect consultation? No, it doesn't. And I think public services have still got a long way, both in terms of how we reach out and consult, how we have relationships with the public that makes them want to talk to us and give the feedback, making them worthwhile, and feeling worthwhile and included is a really big cultural challenge for us in all of our roles. So no, I do recognise that, and I recognise that absolutely. I've tried my best to reach out via representative groups and associations to reach people. I think you guys as panel members, particularly those in elected office, can kind of help me do that, and no doubt recognise the same problems in the kind of bodies that you're elected to as well. But I do try, Bob and team, to kind of really, just by culture and by attitude, and I know those of you that know me well know that my intention is to do that and to be as accessible as I can, and as kind of grounded and down to earth and inclusive as I can, because that's me as a fairly basic individual. We do always need to do more, but I do assure you that I've done the best I can this time through reaching out just beyond publishing a survey, where we pushed our in-person and virtual sessions. Believe me, we have heard from a really wide range of people asking really difficult questions. And as much as I respect this panel, genuinely some of the questions that myself and the Chief Constable were hit with were some of the hardest and most thought-provoking issues you come across from victims of crime, from those that don't feel included in policing, from those with challenges from minority groups, that really did whack it to us in these sessions, to be honest. They have tested us, and they've made us think, and they've made us respond in those sessions. And I've never come across, if you like, that was myself and Darren, I've never come across a Chief Constable so at one with our community, so willing to listen, not to duck the issues, but to respond. And, you know, that gives me kind of pride in the power of our joint appointments of Chief Constables, which we'll probably touch on maybe later on in the meeting if you want to. But no, we're on a real move with this, Bob, and you know, I think we can only improve in future consultations every year on what we do. But COVID hasn't helped, but I've done my best for you, Bob.
Right, thank you, Commissioner. I feel quite reassured by that answer, and I'm glad that has been the approach to the consultation period. I will save any pointed political comments for other arenas, but I just felt I had to drop that in from the outset to set the tone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bissett. Very valid points. Could I go to Councillor Delaney and then Bob Fusart? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, Commissioner. You've covered a lot of what I was going to ask in the previous answer to Councillor Bissett's comments, who I would agree with. These forms of regressive taxation are really getting down on people. So all I would add is I'm usually buttonholed when I'm out doing my shopping on a Saturday by the team. I don't think you've missed me yet, unfortunately, however hard I try. However, the difficulty of the circumstances this year are obvious. How did it compare to previous years when we weren't under this COVID legislation? Numbers wise, let us say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And yeah, we are always blessed to get your presence and input at consultations, as well as this meeting on behalf of residents. And I do continue to thank you for doing that. I mean, I've got to say, on the online consultations, we did have a big presence of councillors, both at parish, town, kind of county level. So we did get representatives of the people in good number, and there were wide invitations to them. This year, Martin, we got in exact numbers 2,282 responses to these surveys. I've got to say, I think from last year I got about 2,500, but last year about 500 of those were face-to-face and about 2,000 were virtual. So I've got to say the virtual ones have gone up, but the whole response as a whole is a couple of hundred down. I've got to say the best responses that I do get, and I'm not knocking the virtual means because it's important, but it's exclusive, isn't it? Because it's exclusive to those that don't have access to the internet or the confidence or the knowledge to use and to find these matters where they do have the internet. Because you've got to find a website, you've got to find out a survey, you might not be on social media. So yes, I would say that despite still getting a high rate, I've missed the personal conversations. I've missed the 3-hour sessions times 8 or 9 LPUs over 4 local authorities where perhaps, the people I come across in the daytime, I can remember lots of time, senior citizens grabbing me by the elbow and turning me around and say, David, and a little bit telling me clearly about the past and their experiences, and, sometimes thanking me for bringing back community policing, which has been a real theme of this term, but also giving me their experience of how life has changed over the years. And I think we can always learn something about the future from knowing more about what has passed us before. So I've missed those qualitative conversations with individual members of the public that have been, what can I say, that just happened on the street as they've walked past me where I'm doing the consultation. I've missed those. I've missed them on a personal level. I've missed them on the feeling of being a representative. It's kind of different being online or being sat at a table at the top of a room, isn't it, taking questions. Now, I've missed the personal contact, and I don't think that's added value to where we are this year. All I can say to you within that is I've really done my best to try to offset that by reaching out. Has it really achieved it? Not the same in my mind, but I'm doing my best, and we have got good responses. We've got the support, we've felt the priorities, and we're delivering budget proposals to you that will meet the priorities that have been put to us. So best we can in an imperfect situation, if I could summarise with that.
Great, thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I've got Mr. Fusar and then Councillor Walker. Bob. You're muted, Bob.
No.
I know it's so slow to respond to my Steam-driven computer. Evan, before I start, I've got 4 questions here from the precept thing, and unlike a lot of youngsters today, I still am a great believer in the old adage: if you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. So these questions I've got relate to the debt, to the mortgage guarantee scheme, the key risk with regards to McLeod and the reform of public sector pensions, and the borrowing capital programme. Am I going to be allowed to ask all these? Because written replies will be no good for the public.
Yeah, I actually think, because the Commissioner's sort of been very articulate with the detail, if you put those questions and let's work our way through them. You happy with that, Commissioner?
I am, Chairman, and if I stick to the brevity that's kind of put to me, which you know is always a challenge to me, and I do accept that, I'll give the briefest answers, and if there's supplementaries, Bob, I do have my technical financial experts with us online, so I'm sure Wendy or Claire can supplement any of my knowledge on your quite precise questions.
Okay,
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you for being candid, Commissioner, and let's go for it, Bob. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Good morning, David. With regard to debt, it mentions there that the Chief Constable collects at least 50% of debtor income within 1 month of the invoice being raised. Now, first of all, is there a target time for the invoices being raised at the outset? And secondly, how is this 50% target measured and reported on to make sure that it's actually being carried out?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. This is something that I have in the minutes taken up with the Chief, the head of legal and the accounts departments on several times, because I believe it's really important to, one, not only collect our money in where there are chargeable services from the police, and let's be clear about what this means. It is about bringing in money that's either been due for chargeable services, things like loans of police officers to other forces when they're under-resourced or have an emergency situation on, anywhere where money needs to be chased to come in. I think that is a reasonable financial target that's set within the public sector. It doesn't mean that only 50% of debt is collected. The aim is to collect 100% of debt, but the short term is within that time scale of 1 month is 50%. I'm really pushing and have pushed the police to ensure that actually we do consider people's ability to repay debt where it is a situation where we offer services that are chargeable. If people can't repay it, do we need to consider very carefully whether we provide the service? Now that's a delicate question, because the services are often provided to keep people safe and to keep order, aren't they? So we do have to consider those situations very, very carefully. Bob, if there was anything more on that in terms of detail, obviously welcome a supplementary, and I know Wendy and Claire from the Constabulary in my office are kind of here to help if you need technical data on that.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether there were any key performance indicators with regards to that requirement.
Yes, Bob, that is the key performance indicator that does appear. It appears in our kind of quarterly updates of our finances that we have each quarter through the year. It is a key indicator. The Constabulary are usually very good at meeting that and are in fact in excess of that. I think the one thing that I should say with that is my memory is that the Constabulary generally bring about 2/3 of debt in within a month, but I know that can be clarified by our staff if you need it to, but it's just over 2/3. That is looked at by me at scrutiny boards, because it is an indication of whether we have effective systems, and these are public resources, and money does need to be chased and does need to be recovered when it's public money. So I'm really keen on the effectiveness of this. I do monitor that on a quarterly basis, and if there's anything that kind of slip with that, I'd be very keen to pick it up. And I'd be keen to pick that up actually in public. I know that several members attend the meeting, so they pick that up in public and no doubt pick it up with me again annually at this meeting. But it's not an annual thing for me, Bob. It is a quarterly scrutiny measure. So hopefully that gives some assurance. But again, Bob, anything more technical, do just say, and Wendy and Claire are online with us today to help with that. But good question, thank you.
Oh, fine, thank you very much. I'll go on to the mortgage guarantee scheme. It's very philanthropic. What size of reserve are we talking about? How long are the loans for? And what is the take-up rate and what interest rate?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. This is a completely new proposal. It's to do with health and well-being of our staff and our officers. It's to do with kind of financial well-being and mental health. The kind of proposal is that you'll note that a lot of our staff, newly in post officers, PCSOs, are on reasonably challenging wages because there haven't been reasonable increases in salaries for over a decade now, and in fact it's judged that people have fallen up to a third behind in their spending power, public services, over the last decade. Now, just to reassure colleagues, this isn't a spend element at all. I'm not authorising or committing any spend here, so we won't be transferring any money out of the constabulary or the PCC's office here. What the concept is that we would offer a reassurance to a lender to help staff, officers, PCSOs to get on that mortgage ladder. We'd offer that guarantee of a small percentage to help them get the deposit and get the mortgage, which would give them a better mortgage rate. The principle behind this, Bob, really is, you know, if you imagine a lot of officers maybe, or staff may be living in a house, and I'll just pick some figures that they're not accurate, but they're for example terms. If you're living in a house at the moment that you rent for maybe £750, you could often buy that house for £500 a month. Now, if we can help people that don't have the means by the security of this to actually get onto that mortgage ladder at an early stage, I believe it creates resilience. I think it creates a loyalty to Cheshire to stay with Cheshire. I think it helps their health, financial, mental well-being, and it actually enables them to stay free of key things that often affect people in decision-making abilities. You know, it helps protect people against bribery by having a reasonable income and by having a secure home life and these kind of aspects. And for me, as you say, it's a philanthropic idea by concept, but it's going to strengthen the constabulary in terms of retaining staff and officers. When you fail to retain, you have a great deal of cost in terms of re-recruitment and training. When people don't have good financial and mental health, and they're interconnected, despite what anyone may say, when people can't afford, you know, there's more going out that comes in. It's a key thing for me that I'm hoping will cost us absolutely nothing, and it doesn't come out of financial spending. It's merely a movement in reserves to back those elements. Now, of course, there's a small risk factor there, which the constabulary have analysed. We're starting this off, Bob, in direct answer to your question, with a £500,000 reserve. Again, just to state, that's not spending, it's a reserve move from one area of current reserves to another area. So the whole reserves don't change because of this, they're still the same. We've just chosen to look at a scheme to improve well-being of our people, and I hope people will understand that, and I hope for the reasons given it will meet with your support. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for that comprehensive answer, because it's obviously, when you look at the face of it, people could look at it and say the force of spending money on people's mortgages when they should be spending them on police officers, etc., etc. But thanks for that. I'll go on to the key risk one then, with regards to McLeod and the reform to the public sector pensions. I know that you set aside 159,000 as a pension impact resource. How have you arrived at this figure, given that later in the report you say that this is an uncertain risk, and is there any steer as to when this may be implemented?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. The McLeod issue comes from challenges with the pension systems, changes in pension systems, and then legal challenges back from those in public services and the representatives, it does cause us some huge uncertainty in how that will affect policing and public services as these judgments are kind of rolled out and we feel the impact of them. I know that Wendy Bebbington of the Constabulary has been working on these for years before my time and continues to. Would you like me to, or would you like the chair to bring in Wendy to give a little bit more detail on that, Bob?
Appreciate that. I just want to know how they come up with the figure.
Yeah, it'd be good to bring Wendy in.
150. It's not a big figure, but again, it's this pennies and pounds.
Yeah, we'll bring Wendy in. I've got 3 councillors queuing up with some questions. So if Wendy could come in, I know Wendy's very precise, so Bob will get a quality answer. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. The McLeod situation is very fluid. Although the remedy information is now out and we're compiling it, the actual work involved is still being sorted out. The figure we set aside was a figure based on what we felt was the cost of additional support to our staff and officers to explain and sort out their options for them, together with any extra analysis we needed from our pension providers. So it's a composite figure for both support inside and also from our pension providers. I hope that answered the question.
You happy with that, Bob?
Yes, thank you, Evan. Yeah, thank you very much, Wendy. Be glad to know my last one then is with regarding to borrowing the capital programme. Could you explain the borrowing figures, which for the coming year are estimated at 5.6 million, and 2 years further down the line it's only 103,000 pounds? And what's the current interest rate, and what contingency is there in place should this interest rate suddenly rise?
Yeah, is Wendy or the Commissioner going to take that?
If I can perhaps just give an introduction, Chairman and Bob, and then obviously for any technical matters on interest rates, etc., I will pass over to Wendy, or in fact Claire from the OPCC. I think there's some real issues around police financing at the moment that affect borrowing. I know that the capital money that used to come from a government for capital expenditure in policing, things like buildings, vehicles, etc., used to be ring fenced. It used to be substantial. It's now down to almost zero, and has been for a good while with that. So we do have to occasionally borrow. We do have to, with the challenges within capital purchases, we have to put some of the revenue into capital to be able to do those things, which, because we don't get that substantial capital grant anymore, means that part of the money we would have usually spent perhaps on large proportions of a frontline does have to go into capital. Borrowing has been necessary right throughout the history of policing. We are, though, under borrowed, and borrowing has been taken really seriously over the past few years, because I really don't believe in relying on kind of borrowing today to pay back tomorrow, because we don't know what the future holds. That's why I've always kind of come to you with what I would kind of call stable budgets. I don't want budgets and commitments that kind of yo-yo up and down each year, that kind of mean taking on and laying off year on year. I've always tried to bring that stability to policing. In terms of the rates of interest, Bob, that they often depend on the rates available at that time, the length of time that you borrow over, those kind of issues. I know the rate at the moment, if you're borrowing long term, for instance, is very low. It's just over 1%. So I think we need to rely on the good judgment of the advice we receive from our financial officers in these issues. But if there was anything else on that, Wendy or Claire, with your permission, Chair, there was anything to add to that on Bob's question, please please feel free to give some of the technicalities.
Yep. Wendy or Claire, would you wish to comment?
Hi, it's Claire. Just to say, I think that the Commissioner's covered everything that I would have wanted to say. As you say, the capital programme obviously is done. The strategy is done over the medium term, and the budget itself is set sort of 1 year in advance. So as additional things come in, this borrowing may perhaps go up in future years, but it's reflecting the best information that we have at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Claire, and thank you for your previous concise response, Wendy. You happy with that, Bob?
Yeah, I'm more than happy. I'm glad to be able to got all my questions in, Evan. Thanks very much.
Thank you for going through the papers in such detail, Bob. I've got Councillor Walker, Riley, then Thompson. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Hello, David. Bearing in mind that there, at the moment anyway, will be elections in May, and none of us who have public office duties may have them in June. Bearing that in mind, can you confirm your support, but not just your support, but the support of the constabulary, bearing in mind there will be a new chief constable, that the role of PCSOs is still very highly regarded? And I say that as a parish councillor supporting a PCSO, and again, it may change in May, but that is something we would want to continue with, because we know our local community find them very reassuring and their services very valuable.
Yes, thank you, PT. First of all, can I say you're absolutely right. It was one of the biggest responses from the public, how much they appreciate our local PCSOs. I take that very seriously. It's part of that vision I think we share, Peter, that, you know, if you've got policing that is deeply connected within communities where people know each other, you know the name and the face of your police officer and your PCSO, we have trusting relationships. That's what solves the little issues and the big issues. That's where we get the intelligence in. That's where we can problem solve. Peter, in the budget, over the last few years, you know, local authorities have been in awful financial positions, sometimes even more stretched than policing and fire. You know, those previously joint funded PCSOs or separately funded PCSOs have diminished. You know, I'm fully committed to trying to keep that stability. In the budget this year, Peter, I do recognise that local authorities are even less able as cuts dig deeper to support PCSOs. You know, where you are in Warrington, many years ago, you part funded 30. Now it's down to kind of 0. What I've done this year is avoided those kind of things of double taxation, and I recognise the stresses on local government finance. In the budget there is a commitment to have 200 commissioner funded PCSOs. That's a minimum. So there's my commitment, taking it forward. That's 122 to have one per community on the ward boundaries model. And then it's to have PCSOs, which we call community PCSOs, that will backfill when we have someone off or someone missing for some time, for our kind of youth engagement programs, the Safer Skills and Young People's Partnership, working on the problem solving teams. So I will guarantee you, Peter, in the future, my number of 200 is something of stability that I want to keep. What I've got to say to you, Peter, is previous to me that there was a budget proposal to reduce PCSOs by about £800,000. That is a substantial knock. I can't guarantee future decisions of future commissioners, and it would be wrong for me to even attempt to bind them on their decisions on where resources are best placed. But I can commit to you that my commitment won't change to that minimum commissioner funded 200 PCSOs. Thanks, Peter.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. And that is reassuring, and I do understand that none of us can commit to anything beyond May.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Riley next, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Commissioner. I'm afraid, David, I can't be quite as generous as some of my colleagues around the consultation response to the budget. I think if we all sort of reflect on the purpose of the role of the PCC, it literally was to make the police accountable to the communities that they serve, and I think to have literally just a response that is only 0.2% of the population is not something that we can say, it might not be as bad as others, but it really just is not good enough when your role is purely a democratic one. I think lockdown has certainly been challenging, but I think it's also been an opportunity where people have engaged in very different ways. And when you see the huge amount of sort of community activism, and you see the huge amount of public support for our frontline workers, of which the police are right up there with the best of the best, I think that 0.2% is very disappointing. You personally, have spent £192,000 of your budget writing to every household in the land, and I think given that amount of expenditure for that amount of response, I would question whether that messaging could have been put to different uses. In the report that you issued after the informal session, there's £893,000 of operational demand around public contact. So I'm trying to sort of wrap this up in a, if you want communities engaged with you, please come and stand in the Morrison's queue with me, because I could probably drum up 2,000 comments for you in Frodsham alone. So I think looking at that as an indictment of, I'm putting up the precept, is you've got no legitimacy for that if you're asking the public what they think. So I'd be interested in your comments on that. I think the local policing model, I know it's something that you stood on back in 2016, but I'm quite keen on the your sort of view on the operational cost of your local policing model. And given that you've provided us with figures that say, police numbers have largely been flat and there's been very little recruitment until this year, your policing model has drawn officers from other elements of the police response, like rapid response, I have to assume.
No, it's not. No. I mean, so many inaccuracies there, Chair, that I'm going to have to answer and correct. It's unbelievable, and I don't believe that they're all honest inaccuracies either. I think there's a lot of politics in that, Chairman. What I'm going to say is take the issues kind of one at a time, because they need a proper discussion, and people need to know the honest truth on these matters. So the budget consultation isn't a referendum. If we want it to be a referendum, we could have made it a referendum to secure votes. Even when you go out to a referendum on things like local council elections, you get this 20 to probably mid 30% kind of responses. If I want a referendum on the budget in Cheshire, it would cost me in excess of £1 million.
It wouldn't cost you anything, David. It would cost us, the taxpayer. And I think you're trying to blur the issues here.
Can I answer without interruption, and then we can perhaps come in with supplementary questions, because I don't think it's fair to have a lot of inaccuracies fired at me and then to be constantly interrupted while I'm answering them. So I want this to be as useful as possible, but scrutiny doesn't mean poor manners, and it doesn't mean unprofessional behaviour. So I'm going to say that, Chair, to start with.
Let's tone it down and keep it civilised, and we can get the main points out. Okay, Commissioner.
So in terms of that consultation, you know, if we look at local authority consultations of budgets this year, you're looking at under 200 responses for a local authority budget consultation. So if you put that on average across Cheshire, I'd have about 800 responses maximum. We've worked really hard on this and we've reached out to it. In terms of my communications with the public, in terms of the spend on letters to the public, Councillor Riley knows that that wasn't in association with the budget. This was to connect people in a very difficult time where there wasn't the ability to come together, to let every member of the public in Cheshire know who their PCSO and local PC were, where they could meet them, what's expected of them, and those kind of contact details to keep in touch with them. That didn't come from my budget, that came from pocket money. It came from money taken off criminals by Cheshire Police that couldn't be spent on normal revenue spend. That is absolutely clear, Chairman. So we do need to deal with these issues kind of very much up front. Now, the issues of money spent on public contact, and it goes on the same as the budget for last year as for this year, it's strengthening our ability to respond to public concerns. And I know the issues have been brought up at this panel in the past about the ability to contact on 101, the ability to get crime recording correctly, and I know you put a question into me for that today, Chairman, on kind of crime data recording and integrity. It's to keep that up high because we don't want to fail victims. We don't want to fail people trying to make contact with Cheshire Police. I've heard very loudly and held the Chief to account on how people make contact with Cheshire Police. He does put that resource mainly into 999 for emergency calls. We want to really strengthen that. Last year's budget, which is now delivered, involves substantially increasing that team. That's been delivered. Now we're bringing in an extra resource into that to make sure the quality of that's right and to make sure the quality of recording is right, to make sure that people get an accurate recording at the first time so we can support them and investigate crimes as would be expected with changing requirements from HMIC on this matter. You know, on local policing, I can guarantee you absolutely that the question is inaccurate, that we have moved anybody from response into local community policing. It is a completely unacceptable and incorrect suggestion to make. In my budget for 1920, supported by you, I brought in an extra 43 police officers. I put them with current beat officers to come up with a 122 community police officers. Not one of them, of the numbers, diminished numbers on response. Now, I've heard other candidates for the PCC election come up with this nonsense. It's absolutely party political nonsense, which I'm not going to countenance. It's merely inaccurate and incorrect. Now, those numbers of the extra 43 in 1920 that you supported didn't take into account the numbers of the government replacement officers that are coming in. Now, they're on top of the 43 that the Cheshire Public, through the precept, directly funded in the budget. And those extra officers, when they're trained, when they're ready to get out on the streets, will be conducted and put in the place that they need to be by the Chief Constable. Not by me, because my decisions aren't the operational ones. It's about priorities, it's about setting the budget, and it's about scrutinising the Chief Constable and holding to account for delivering those priorities within the budget. So I hope that's clarified some of the inaccuracies that have been put forward that people are basing political campaigns on. I don't want to be political about this, but I'm not going to sit here, Chairman, and accept clear inaccuracies. As fact, I'm simply not going to do that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lynn.
Councillor Riley, I fully accept you may not be totally at ease with that response, and if any meeting in here is going to get prickly, it's going to be this one. I've got 3 councillors in the pipeline eagerly waiting, so if I can give you the opportunity to give a brief response, if you would, please.
If I may come back, Chair, to later date when other members have had the opportunity to speak, I'll give way.
All right, thank you for giving way. I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Dave Thompson. Sorry, Councillor Dave Thompson. I've got Councillor Finlow and then Councillor Judah. Dave.
It won't unmute.
I've got you there, Dave.
Yeah, I know it's. Oh, sorry. I had a problem for some reason. My some people might say it's a good idea. It's good. My computer didn't want to unmute. Listen, this panel has a it gets certain responsibilities to perform, and one is a decision. Do we accept the precept that's been put before us? We can say we don't, and we can suggest to the Commissioner for certain reasons we think he should go away and look at this again. I have to tell you that I believe that we should accept this precept, and I'll tell you for why. In the papers we've been given, and in all the information that you've been given, the single most important fact is this. Cheshire Constabulary's income from central government formula funding has decreased by almost £14 million in cash terms since 2010-11. This equates to a real term cut of 26%. That is despite all the headlines about extra police and things, Cheshire Police overall in real terms has sustained 10 years of cuts. And as well as sustaining 10 years of cuts, the other thing is, Chair, when you're doing work looking at the emergency response network, real financial pressures coming from that, costing forces millions of pounds and having to set aside millions of pounds from government error. The issue of COVID and how that could be handled, I'm not going to bore you with that, but I think some of the government response to that has been atrocious. The fact is, at the end of the day, this precept before us is 19 pence per week if you live in a Band A property, and in the highest band properties in Cheshire, the maximum you will pay is 57 pence a week. Now, I don't buy a lot of stamps, but the last time I bought a stamp, you couldn't get a stamp for that. And I don't think it's reasonable. I think it's perfectly reasonable that, a consultation exercise is undertaken for the issue of 19 pence a week. We really don't need to go to the point of standing in queues at Sainsbury's, Morrison's, or anywhere else. At the end of the day, we're talking about most of the police funding comes from government grants, and the survey the government undertake on policing funding it doesn't exist because they've never done one. So I think these figures of 19 to 57% are perfectly reasonable in the circumstances of a force that is under significant pressure and has sustained significant cuts. Because at the end of the day, I just know my income's gone up in 10 years. But if it hadn't have done, and it had gone down in the extent to which this has gone down, I know that in different, you'd really have to cut your cloth accordingly at your home. So I think by and large, these figures, by the way, are comparative to what other forces, by and large, are putting forward in terms of percentage increase. So I don't see no reason why we should be rejecting this. We can pick at it, but I don't see any reason why we should be rejecting this. And I think we need to accept this precept. And the next item on the agenda, bear in mind, is scrutiny of the Police and Crime Commissioner and asking and getting to him and asking questions. So I think as things stand at this point in time, I think the next item on the agenda is a very important one soon to be moving on to. So I've heard several people speak. At this stage, I'm happy to say that I will move that the precept on those figures be accepted.
Right, thank you, Councillor Thompson and Commissioner. I've got two councillors. I agree we need to move to either make a proposal into how the panel will vote. I've got two councillors to move on to. Paul Finlow's been waiting patiently. Paul.
Well, there was nothing much political about that which we've just heard, was there? I fear there was. You wouldn't think the government is spending 636 million this year boosting police funding, would you? You wouldn't think they're committed to 20,000 through the Uplift programme additional officers, which we're getting our fair share of, with 88 coming along in the forthcoming year. Excellent news. Thank you, government, we should be saying, not going back over the years. But that's not my question. The chairman will ask me quite rightly to ask a question. I want to refer to the figure no one else has referred to, and that is the precept proposed before us today is 7.1%, which contrasts rather sharply with the current inflation cost of living figure of a couple of percent. So I'm wondering whether or not, should not greater importance be afforded to the police and the commissioner living within the taxpayers' limited means in setting the precept. Many taxpayers say to me, who have occupational pensions that are not index linked, we can't afford 7.1% when added to the 5% our local authority, for example, is proposing, and no doubt it's much the same in the West, I know not. But why is it that the Commissioner's record is always the maximum increase possible every year? Does it really have to be that? Isn't there scope for further efficiencies to do something more so it's not the maximum, just short of the trigger for a referendum every single year, which is what the record seems to be? And it's not surprising, is it, Chairman, that we've not had a referendum for additional proposed expenditure even above this year's 7.1%, because every time you put that to the people in a referendum, every time without exception, mostly local authorities, of course, proposing it, it's lost. So when you go out, it's hardly surprising, is it, and consult people and offer them good things, additional policing, we're all in favour of it, they're likely to be in favour. But when it comes to paying it and you get actual votes in ballot boxes, they don't approve. Thank you. A bit of balance, I thought, a bit of balance.
Thank you, Councillor Finlow, and this was always going to be an interesting meeting to chair, and I think we've got balance at the moment, and I'll come across the Commissioner to respond to your question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul. I think Paul put some opinions over there that really do give the political division of opinion up and down the country. And what he doesn't state there is actually any factual inaccuracies or get deeply into politics. So I'm not in the least offended by factually accurate challenges and opinions, Chair. I think that's quite welcome. I think everything Paul says there is fairly unchallengeable. What he clearly misses out there is the background against which council tax is raised, and the baton that has been passed over from central government, which is funded by taxpayers, even though police funding has been slashed, forcing Cheshire Police into factually £60 million worth of cuts over the last 10 years. It's hurt Cheshire Police, it's hurt the numbers, it's hurt motivation, it's hurt morale, and it's hurt our communities. Base that on all the cuts that have been made to other public services, mental health services, youth services, social services, family services. It's ripped apart our communities. Now, when we look at my option to increase the council tax and to consult with people, I've always had about 2/3 of people agreeing in terms of the public with proposals that have been made. But have I just made those proposals off the top of my mind? No, I've not. I've took the professional advice of chief constables. I've took the advice of the public. I've had it supported by the panel each and every year with yourself on the panel, Paul. And let's look at the fact that comes with the decision making with this. You know, the government give a real terms cut every single year to policing. The amount of government money that's gone into policing every year is decreased. I came into office with a simple promise to protect policing and to protect the public. Every year, the government have said what kind of money, and no different this year, what money is required for policing. Now, those big figures that you mentioned of investments in policing this year relied upon commissioners increasing by £15 per annum. It was built in the expectation of the government and the policing minister and the chancellor and the prime minister that the budget for policing nationally relied on over £200 million coming from local precept payers, relied upon it. So commissioners aren't left with a lot of choice on this issue. They recognise this money is required for policing, and commissioners go out there and consult with the public on whether the public agree with them. So quite a task to change there. What I just finished with is that Cheshire, despite the 7% increase, is in the lowest 10 police forces in the land. We're still within the lowest 10 precepting forces in the land on what we charge for policing. It makes us a good police force. It makes us recognise good in efficiency and effectiveness by Her Majesty's Inspectorate. And we're up there with the best whilst being in the lowest 10 of police precepts charged. Take that with the Commissioner's Office of being in the lowest 5 charges and best value OPCCs in the land. Paul, that the money's been spent well. You will notice that in every year that I've been Commissioner, there still have been savings made, because despite huge government cuts which the bat has been pressed to local residents in terms of the precept, we've had to make savings, and this year's no different. There's over £1.2 million of savings that fit into the government's requirement of over £120 million of savings from local police forces this year. So we're doing everything exactly how it needs to be done. I welcome the opinion, but I'm sure you'll welcome the challenge back. Thank you, Paul.
And it's discretionary, the precept increase, Chairman. It's not mandatory. There might be a government expectation, but it's not a requirement. It's discretionary. That's what I'm advocating is a different exercise of discretion than the one we see every year, which is always the maximum. Thank you.
Wide points being made there. I'll pick up on Councillor Thompson said to move to accept the precept, but before that, I've got 2 more councillors that wish to speak. Councillor Judah and Councillor Delaney. Councillor Judah.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Actually, some of the questions I had have already been addressed. All I can say on a personal level, I live in what we've sort of fondly called old fogey land, because there are a lot of older people living where I live. People were really thrilled to get the letter. I didn't talk to everybody, but people said to me, hey, this is good, isn't it? Change from Cheshire East to send us those things that we don't really want to know about. So they were really pleased about that. They needed to know who the PCSO was, if they didn't already know. So they were really pleased about that. I do think we need to be looking at the way crime has changed and the way our communities have changed. Martin or somebody already mentioned the cut in budgets from 2010, and at the same time crime is increased, and a different form of crime, a cleverer form that takes more, it takes more time actually working it out. I'm thinking particularly about crime that older people are subject to. So nobody wants to pay more money, I find, but in my experience, people are happy to play or less uncomfortable with supporting the police because they want to feel safe in the communities. They want to see the PCSOs, and they want to see you attack things like modern day slavery and modern day things that have come up. So I would like to pardon?
Is there a question?
No, yeah, I can think of one if I can just go on a bit. But I would like to say, Chair, that this is the most unpleasant thing I've attended since I've been on this panel. I think it's been, I think some of the comments have been quite offensive. And my question could be, are we attempting to go along with a Handforth Parish Council meeting? Everybody seemed to be rude to everybody. So I'm sorry if I haven't got a direct question, but I just want to say I think the police are doing a great job and I want to see more of it. Thank you.
I would concur with the police doing a great job, and heaven forbid we have a replay of what we viewed last night or this morning from Handforth. And I've always prided ourselves on, you know, being apolitical, but it's in a meeting like this, it's always going to be very difficult. But I thank the members for conducting themselves in a very civil manner, whilst putting across, you know, what might be their side's view of a local taxation. Could I move to a final speaker before we take Councillor Thompson's proposal to move on this issue? Councillor Martin Delaney.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask the Commissioner if he would, give us his assurance that he will continue to try and replace the police that were savagely cut over the last 10 years, even though he seems to be constrained by finance.
Thanks, Martin. For me, Chairman, absolutely. As I said when I first came into this job, I'll protect policing and I'll protect the public. As you know, my budgets have always been about sustainability, not about officers down, and then in an election year try to push them up. I'm not interested in that political nonsense or mumbo jumbo. We don't need yo-yo politics in policing. What we need is sustainable growth, sustainable community safety. That's what I give you. You know, we started off in 2010 with 2,142. By 2014, we'd hit 1,914. We'd lost over 200 cops. And then we bounced back up because it's election time. No. We've got to do this sustainably. I started with 2003. Last year, I finished with no increase of money in from the government up to 2,046. There's a clear increase of 43 over 2 budget setting periods of myself. That's been sustainable. It's sustainable. It's increased. I haven't had to let them go. I built them carefully. And let me be totally unpolitical. I welcome the new numbers of police coming into Cheshire Constabulary. I've called for them. I've fought for them. The public have called and fought for them. The Police Federation, police officers have called and fought for them because they've been at risk without them. All I want to say is please don't think that these are additional uplift officers, because the fact of the matter is the replacement officers for the damage that have been done over the last decade. And that's not a political statement, it's merely fact. And we're not back there yet to where we were 10 years ago in terms of funding, officer numbers, staff numbers, or PCSOs. We're nowhere near on the whole. So let's just be factual about it. Let's be honest about it. We do want sustainable policing. We want policing that works. We don't want yo-yo politically driven budgets. We need sustainability, fairness to our communities, and the ability to keep people safe. I committed to that, guys, when I came in. I've worked with you continuously throughout that time. I've worked with our communities. I've worked with the police service, and we're delivering. So I do welcome the extra officers coming in, those that are replacing the ones that we've lost. The public aren't blindsided by that. They know exactly what's happening, and they know the good job that police, PCSOs, police staff and volunteers do for them every day. Cheshire's got a great police service. We're one of the best. We're one of the lowest costing while we're the best. That's why we're recognised for efficiency and effectiveness by Her Majesty's Inspectorate as good. And that's why we serve the residents of Cheshire the very best that we can. So let's get away from the negativity. Let's be proud of the jobs that we do and our public servants do. Let's be proud of the jobs that you guys do and the really important tasks you've got to do. Do remember, even with the national cuts and local increases, that is the government passing the baton over if we want to keep a police service running. And let's make sure that we can support a budget that isn't all sweetness and light, because despite the investments I'm making, there's still over £1 million worth of savings. There isn't money being thrown around here or anything else. So thanks for the question. If you do feel able to support the Chief Constable, myself and the residents of Cheshire in this again, as you have so often in the past, do have your scrutiny, do ask the deep inquiring questions, and please do give me your advice, because you're a key part of that process, more important than ever when government is less and we rely on the precept to raise it. And I've not failed to take into account every issue about hardship with this. I've thought long and hard about this, and this is the only way to keep Cheshire Police in a way where it can keep Cheshire safe. I wouldn't be proposing otherwise. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for everything you're doing. Chairman, I'd like to, going back to the proposal from Councillor Thompson, I'd like to second that proposal.
Okay, I've got I've written a list of members, because voting is always difficult in virtual meetings, especially when you can't see everyone on screen. So what I propose to do, I've got a list of members by each authority, is go through the list, and when your name is called, can you give your vote either yes or no? Is everyone happy with that approach?
Yep.
Councillor Warren.
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Finlow.
Against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Judah.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Plumpton Walsh.
For.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Davidson.
You're muted, Jan.
Jan, just put your hand up. Are you there? Say again, Jan. Can anyone see Jan if we ask her to put her hand up or down, whichever, thumbs down? I suspect to know which way it'll be.
Chairman, I was back to her at the end of the vote.
Yeah, for. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Can you hear me now? Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can do, Jan.
Right, sorry. For.
We've got your vote. Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Sadly against.
Councillor Bissett.
For.
Councillor Delaney.
Yes, for the proposal.
Mrs. Hardwick.
For.
Mr. Fusart.
For.
Do I need to vote? Sorry, procedurally.
Chairman, you can choose to vote if you wish.
For.
Chairman, that's 11 votes in favour and 2 votes against, with no abstentions.
Okay. Just to summarise that, and it was always going to be a bit rocky, and you know, I had uppermost in my mind. We don't want to up like that parish council meeting did last night, and nor previously one of the meetings that the commissioner attended from Warrington Parish Council, which is a shame. It was always going to get heated, but we're part of that policing family. We should never forget that, and we have great pride in our police force, but we're not scared of expressing our own views. I don't have any views, being a political agnostic, and I have to try and ensure it's played with a straight bat. I'm proud we did that today, and people, you know, kept it all together. We've ended up with a result, which is important, because a panel yesterday didn't end up with a result, which I think is the first time in the UK. So we keep a close eye on how that pans out. Can I ask members, do you want a 2-minute adjournment before we go into the scrutiny session?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay.
Chair.
Please.
Thank you. That slide up, Martin, please. It's been 2 minutes, thank you.
Oh, God. Back in a minute. I've sent the letter. Yeah. Oh, God.
How are we not keeping you up there, Dave?
Norman, are you going to be? You're going to have to make some space on that wall behind you for all these baby pictures. You know. You're going to cross the ceiling, maybe.
Now, I think he's moving house, Dave, to accommodate it.
At least if he's having twins, they'll share the same bedroom, won't they?
Chairman, we are going out live.
Chairman is muted.
Thank you for that. I said it, you might have been able to lip read. Are we all back with us? Can we move to commence with item 10 on the agenda? Are we waiting on the Commissioner, or is he with us?
I'm with you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Quite a long session. I'm not trying to cut it short, but approaching 3 hours. But the important session, this. If I could start us off, Councillor Davidson has got an issue which I think she's especially qualified with her background in the NHS and mental health nursing to raise with the Commissioner. Could I ask you to raise that point, Jan?
Right, hiya, Dave. I hope you can hear me. Good. Right, the chair had been made aware of a system in Wales called a CAN card, and this was to be held by people who were using cannabis for medicinal purposes. Now, I contacted our drugs and alcohol person within Warrington because I worked in the drugs team, but I'm sorry to say I've been retired for 10 years, which came as a shock to me. But anyway, by the by. Now, she did a little bit of research on this within Merseyside and Cheshire and had no knowledge of this. But she, along with myself, which is going to sound terrible, but sadly from experience, this would be a card that I would wonder of its effectiveness, because it would lend itself to being forged, misappropriated, etc. She felt that the same as me. But that said, it is an important issue that Evan raised, that people who are for epilepsy, MS, whatever, that they should be, freely available, because it still is a Class B drug, as you know. So I just wonder if you could, throw some light on that. Thank you very much, Dave.
Yeah, Commissioner, the CAN card, are we all aware of it in Cheshire and looking towards using it?
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Evan. It's something that I am aware of from discussions with the Commissioner in North Wales, who's takes a very kind of forward-looking approach to this issue and many issues around it. For me, I think we really need a national conversation for policing of these areas. I think we need a national discussion with government about this and the approach of criminality and the discussion about criminalisation or decriminalisation. What I do know is that where a public health approach has often been taken to these issues, there has been some real successes with individuals moving forward. We do have to decide, I suppose, at some level, whether criminality and wishing to give people a criminal record, possibly imprison them, is the answer to this, or whether there's a more balanced approach. For me, I'd really like to see some national leadership on this. As I say, I think North Wales are one of two areas that I have spoke to that are definitely kind of leading lights in trying new things. Let's be honest, we're not winning the war on drugs, are we, as a nation or as individual forces? That does need, it needs a rethink, and I'd be very happy to get involved in those debates, have a chat with the Chief Constable about this particular approach and see how widely it might be used in Cheshire. But I do have a clear commitment to working those with addictions in Cheshire, particularly those that have offended or re-offended with addictions, because there are so many things other than the drug issue. Just from a very personal sense, I realise that, you know, many addictions, whether it be drugs, alcohol, that sometimes lead to criminality, aren't the focus of the person involved because they want to be involved in criminality. They're trying to escape from perhaps things that have happened to them in their lives, which drives them to drugs or alcohol. A number of circumstances might be involved. So what I'm calling for, what I'm committing to is I'll have a good chat with the Chief Constable about it. I will have a chat with North Wales about it in terms of could we make this national, and I am very keen to become involved just in that whole national debate about criminality and that failing war against drugs. Thanks, Jan, and thanks.
Could I just, Chair, could I just come back a little second? It could be, I mean, closer to home is Liverpool, who were the forerunner for the syringe exchange scheme, which was then picked up, and also Warrington. Sorry, that's my phone. Warrington, who had a Dr. Marks, who believed in giving people heroin in a therapeutic area, because that lessened the dangers to people. But also with cannabis, I mean, it was a knee-jerk reaction by Ed Ball's Labour to have it from C to B, because a lot of people would argue that when people are accessing cannabis, they seep into criminality, and that's the danger. So it would be good if you could investigate that, and it would stop people from having to mix with criminals to get a spliff or whatever. Thank you.
Thanks,
Jan. Thanks, Jan. If I could put it into context and just I can pass you some stuff across, Commissioner. The Deputy Chief Constable of Lincolnshire is leading on this for the National Police Chiefs Council. It's not the police that have come up with CanCard, it's a support charity. Just a brief bit of context. 1.4 million people now, and the law passed 2 years ago, are eligible for prescribed cannabis, but they can only get it privately. And the average cost of a prescription per month is £1,500. So you can imagine what's happening is people who can legitimately use cannabis for a medical condition under the law are buying it illicitly. So police forces are being asked to use discretion where a CanCard is produced. Jan's absolutely right. There's issues around, are people going to get CanCards and legitimise drug taking when it's not for medicinal purposes? But your lead on this could be very helpful, because clearly, whilst the National Police Chief Council's done work on it, people out there don't know about it. So it would be a good one for you to take up, and I'll email the stuff across to you from National Police Chiefs Council. Okay, just let me, I've got Councillor Finlow, Councillor Norman Plumpton Walsh and Councillor Riley. Could I go to Councillor Finlow, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I read in my Daily Telegraph, and I'd like to know how this applies to Cheshire, that there is a 5,000 recruitment shortfall in detectives and the difficulties attached thereto. And the inspectorate has described this as a, quote, national crisis, unquote. I'm wondering how that applies to us in Cheshire. And I particularly notice that Cheshire is among the forces that have launched a fast-track scheme for recruits becoming a trainee detective with 2 A-levels at 18. Now, this sounds, though it might have something beneficial in it, but it would need, I would have thought, at age 18, rather careful handling. So could I inquire of the Commissioner what the situation is in Cheshire and whether he's reviewed this scheme I've referred to? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good, very good question. I think there is a national shortage, and kind of talking to colleagues in the Police Federation, I think there are reasons why that we do need to overcome perhaps either one, where that job doesn't seem to be attractive, where police officers want to move into that one, because obviously we do have an increase in the amount of police officers, as you mentioned earlier. There shouldn't be a national shortage, and we need to overcome the reasons why. I do note the direct entry scheme, which should have at least the minimum standards of anyone else trying to enter policing. And I do also think, Paul, that there's a clear issue here for non-warranted officers, i.e. police staff investigators, because what we need to consider here is what is the actual role that we're looking at. The role we're looking at is for people who will detect or investigate crime. There is the warranted powers aspect, which police officers need to carry out arrests, etc. But is that the only means of which you can use to investigate crimes? And the answer is clearly no. So for me, that there are really 3 aspects we need to look at here, and I have talked to the Chief about this. One of them is making the job more attractive to those in policing already as police officers. The second one is reaching out for other experiences in life that may have the attributes to bring people in on a fast track scheme to fill those gaps. And the third one for me would be looking to the aspects of being a detective or an investigator that don't need the warranted powers, and thus using police staff to perform some of those roles where appropriate. One of the challenges there, obviously, and it's not often talked about, is the huge decrease in police staff over the last decade and still ongoing, because the focus seems to be very much on police officer numbers. And we do have to recognise that police officers alone can't run a police service and keep us safe. There's a lot of backup, a lot of front line that aren't police officers. So it's getting that mix right, but I think it's an excellent question. I hope you'll accept my reassurance, and I will pursue it further with the Chief Constable further to your concerns, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you find out, or do you know what the actual shortage figure is in Cheshire now, please, and the impact that will have on the detection rate? Because the detection rate is rather worrying, which we've discussed before.
I'll find out the exact current position of that for you, Paul. I do know that we have, as we kind of discussed before, a kind of unprecedented amount of serious crimes in Cheshire, those that are in the kind of homicide range that are being investigated at the moment. I do know that that's put our departments under significant stress. The absence of detectives has meant that we obviously have to pull resource from elsewhere in the force to assist there. So I recognise it's an issue. We put money in the budget into that last year, recognising the demand. There's further resources going into it this year, but that needs to be absolutely the right resource without affecting detectives that would work on our kind of front line within our communities. So let me get you a up-to-date perspective from the Chief Constable, Paul, and I'll be in touch via the panel with that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful. If you could also ascertain if we're actively recruiting 18-year-olds as trainee detectives as well, I'd be interested in that too, because it does sound quite innovative, but I thought we'd need very careful handling.
I agree.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Finlay. I'll make sure Martin puts that in the action log so as we follow up on that. qualified response here. Now, I've got Councillor Warren has to leave the meeting at 1 o'clock, so I'm bringing him up the agenda. Of Councillor Warren, Norman Plumpton Walsh, Councillor Riley, but before Norman, I haven't seen his hand up here, but Bob Fusar also wants to speak. So after Mick Warren, Bob Fusar. Mick, over to you.
Thanks very much, Evan. Apologies to the other members who are waiting, but I do generally have to go to a meeting at 1 o'clock. It's a question, Commissioner, around COVID vaccinations and a reluctance, or well, we know that the police are not named in the top 4 tranches that are getting the vaccine. I have to declare an interest here because my son is a police officer with Cheshire Police. Much of their work is done, and the contact they have with public in the areas of of deprivation, which studies are showing is where the COVID numbers are highest. So there's a there's a more likely probability that a frontline police officer will come in contact with people or persons with COVID. I wondered if you've had discussions with the Chief Constable around why police officers are not getting offered these spare vaccinations which are going on at the moment. I know from personal experience, my wife gives the vaccinations out, and the police are not on the list that can be rung to see if they have got 4 or 5 officers because there are spare vaccines left at the end of the day. And I suppose it's a 2 or 3 part question. This are we pushing for frontline officers to get vaccinated, and are we also pushing to be included on this spare vaccine list, if you like?
Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Mick. Thank you, Evan. Yes, myself and the Chief Constable have discussed this because from a public point of view, it would seem very difficult to understand why police officers on the front line wouldn't receive this protection. For me, initially, it seems like sending police into a difficult situation, perhaps without a radio or a baton or a shield in a public order situation. And I can see how it's seen as comparable to that. We are expecting police officers to enforce, particularly against the most kind of flagrant abuses of the regulations and people that aren't keeping to them, you know, those that are having a house party, perhaps with lots of people in there, those that are gathering in large groups. We expect police officers to kind of go in to educate people and try to get them to comply before enforcing. And there have been significant prosecutions taken in terms of the EPNs given for these now. It's a major focus for Cheshire to stop the virus from spreading. So I completely agree with you. It's a government decision. I understand their focus on vulnerability and getting the order correct. I fully support the NHS getting them, the vaccines. What I do accept is, my understanding is these vaccines don't give immunity, but they do help people that catch COVID really deal with the effects of the virus, and hopefully we will get an immunisation soon rather than a vaccination. Where this actually becomes really real, Mick, and I know that you know this from your kind of past in policing and obviously strong current interest, is that we have seen deaths in policing that could have been prevented, but for not receiving a vaccine. I'm sad to say that we've had these in Cheshire. That's got to strengthen our resolve to encourage the government to give frontline staff the vaccination. It's one of those deeply troubling political decisions that government have to make in politics as to who gets what, where and when. I'm sure if we ask our public and police officers' families, they want them to have the vaccine to keep them safe and hopefully keep them alive and well. So myself and the Chief Constable are clearly agreed on this. No, the answer is it's not happening. We'll keep pushing with the Police Federation and others to make this happen. And with saying that, I do accept when you're drawing the line as a government somewhere, that's a very difficult decision. But on this issue, I simply think omitting police officers from this is really wrong. Thanks, Mick. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Mick. I think the panel would agree with you on that. Okay, I'll put the speakers order up because they're coming in sort of thick and fast. I know Bob says he's had his hand up. It's not showing me, but I accept he had his hand up first if he says he did. Bob, who's up?
Thank you for your faith in me, Evan. Commissioner, the Chief Constable says that the fatal five account for 80% of killed or seriously injured. Could you explain why across nearly all the categories that make up the fatal five, there's been a marked decline in enforcement by up to 48.5% in the case of the use of mobiles? Now, there's two caveats to this. One, I asked the question because almost 82% of those asked strongly agreed that there should be more traffic enforcement. And two, this trend was in place even before COVID. So I don't think COVID is an excuse for this one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. That's exactly the kind of questions that I ask the Chief Constable who are scrutinised. And, you know, I do recognise you're scrutinising me rather than the Chief Constable on the matter. The Fatal Five is vitally important for us as a campaign. You know, the amount of deaths that are caused or are at least linked to using a mobile device, taking your concentration off the road for even a second, can lead to death of more than one person, and not necessarily for the others with a fault basis. You know, the use of drugs or alcohol, the failure to wear a seatbelt, the failure to pay due care and attention to our roads, the increasing number of people using drugs rather than alcohol, which requires a different approach, of which the figures tend to be fairly mixed in there. You know, actually having drug tests by the roadside is a more modern test, but it's really important because we've got to have the facilities and the ability to do the drug testing by the roadside for a various amount of drugs that can really change the way that people react and respond to difficulties on the road. So there is a wide range of common factors that really influence deaths on the road. I'm trying to put the resources into policing to make sure that's upheld. I am trying to make sure that the resources there to do that. We really do have an exceptional roads and crimes team. That's backed up now, as you know, on certain aspects of this. I didn't mention speed, did I, earlier on, as in the how fast a car goes rather than a drug reference to those chances of people being killed or seriously injured. So I think the resources is spread because the Fatal Five are concentrated on in different ways. I want this to be a really strong area for Cheshire Constabulary to deliver on. I think, as you rightly say, Bob, some of these areas aren't just with the roads and crime team. They're with other areas like PCSOs and local policing now within Cheshire to make sure enforcement spread across the county. Also, these roles are shared with Cheshire Fire and Rescue, who play a huge part in prevention. Because let's not forget, this isn't just a policing issue. When the Fatal Five lead to a fatality, there's fire and rescue officers, let's put it as bold as picking up body parts off the roads, which isn't a job any of us would want to do, as well as paramedics and police officers, cutting people out of cars, you know, seeing some things that frankly we wouldn't expect to see in our lifetimes, and I commend them for that. So Bob, it's a real partnership role. It's something we're committing to in the current budget, recognising some of the the challenges of you can't do everything all the time with lower budgets. You will see some big figures in that budget to commit to improving these areas. And Bob, with the whole partnership, I think the figures we need to bear in mind is that decreasing number of killed and seriously injured on our roads. Now that's, I think is 37 for the last year recorded, but it's gone down from, I think, in excess of 80 from years before. That's not just an emergency services success. It's due to culture changes. It's due to safer cars. When you have an accident, it's due to technology. But I think the investments do really affect the outcomes, and the vision affects the outcomes. I will keep an eye on that with the Chief Constable and Cheshire Constabulary. And I think the real key for me with this, Bob, is making it everyone's business. And that will be the plan for the next year. Following scrutiny, you expect action from me in investment. I have scrutinised it. The next year is about not just making this the focus of small teams. You know, every response cop, when they're out and about in a vehicle, every community cop should have an eye on the roads. We should all be tackling this when we see it. And I think that's the focus for Cheshire Police, particularly with the new Chief Constable and conversations going into the next year. So recognise the issues, Bob, and I'm using my influence to try to deal with them. Thank you.
Thank you on that, Commissioner. Just as long as I can be reassured that policing hasn't gone back to just being the one Bobby who's looking at dash cam footage, and the police are saying, well, the public are doing it for us. That would be a bad way to go.
Well, Bob, that's another question, but what you say there is true. That there is one specialist, Bobby, looking at all the dash cam that comes into Cheshire. You'll see in the scrutiny papers I've challenged the Chief Constable on whether that gives sufficient resilience and meets the demand of that. The Chief's going